Hello and welcome to 1000 PSTV. Welcome to a new episode of How to Ride a Motorcycle. Learning how to ride properly. This time, the topic is hairpin bends in the Alps. How to ride tight mountain corners correctly. A lot of drama has already happened in these corners. They have pushed many strong riders to the edge of despair. Some riders love them, while for others, they are simply too tight. We are talking about hairpin bends. For some riders, hairpins are something they hate. For others, they are one of the greatest joys of riding a motorcycle. And to make sure they are no longer something you hate, but something you can truly enjoy, watch this video and listen to all the different opinions. We have some very experienced riders in front of the camera, showing how you too can enjoy hairpin bends. That way, even a pass like the Stelvio can be pure riding pleasure from the first corner to the last. That is why we made this video.
The problem is probably this. Let's say it is an uphill section, a very tight uphill corner. The rider basically has to shift his body weight a little bit to the outside, but at the same time, he has to make sure the engine does not stall. That means the motorcycle needs a certain amount of lean angle at a relatively low speed, and the rider also has to position his body in a way that does not disturb or block the motorcycle, and all of that happens at very low speed. So if he has an engine that is a bit rough or jerky, he might be afraid that the engine will stall. In reality, he would need to work very gently with the clutch, and the problem is that hardly anyone has ever really trained this. Then he gets there, wants to ride up the Stelvio Pass because he thinks he is a great rider, and suddenly realizes that he cannot do it. And turning around on a slope, for example, is really difficult. At the VSV, the Association for Promoting Road Safety with the police, they had a very good exercise. You rode up towards the crest of a hill, but you did not ride over the crest. You rode up and then you had to turn around at the top, right there on the slope. That is not easy. It really is not easy, because if you sit neutrally on the bike, gravity will simply pull you over. That means you have to shift your body to the outside. It is a small riding technique lesson that you should think about before you get into that situation. A trial rider will not care. He knows how to deal with it. But a road rider who enjoys wide flowing corners might suddenly think this is not as easy as it looks.
There are several factors. In the Alps, there are many roads where the surface is uneven, rippled, or broken up. That is one factor that can already create a problem in your head just by looking at the road surface. Then there are the gradients. Some hairpins are built fairly flat, others climb very steeply, or of course descend very steeply. Then there is the width of the road. As the name suggests, hairpins often no longer have a real round shape. You really have to be able to turn the motorcycle within a very tight radius.
A downhill or uphill gradient can feel either pleasant or unpleasant. Normally, riders experience an uphill gradient as pleasant. Why? Because it dramatically shortens braking distances. A downhill gradient is usually perceived as less pleasant because it increases braking distances. You need to know that and adjust your speed accordingly. But essentially, it comes down to vision technique. In a hairpin, you have to turn your head very clearly and deliberately so that your riding line follows. You have to approach a hairpin nicely from the outside. That allows you to increase the radius a little bit. A slightly larger radius immediately means that you might be able to ride through the hairpin 2 kilometers per hour faster. And if you manage that, you gain much more stability, because this is mainly a balance problem caused by the very low speed.
We can turn our head left and right until we reach the limit. That means that for corners with more than 90 degrees, we can still manage with normal head movement. But with switchbacks or even tighter corners, especially when they have more than 120 degrees, at some point you reach the limit of your neck movement. When I have the handlebars in my hands, I also move my left shoulder slightly forward for a right-hand corner. That way, by adding shoulder movement, I can look further into the corner. At some point, the movement of the cervical spine simply reaches its limit, so I cannot just keep turning my head as far as I want, not far enough to comfortably look over my shoulder. That is why I move the shoulder forward. In a right-hand corner, the left shoulder. In a left-hand corner, the right shoulder.
For hairpin bends, or tight bends in general, I basically need only two things: the correct vision technique and the cornering technique called counterweighting. Counterweighting is absolutely essential. If I can do those two things, I can have a lot of fun in hairpins.
If I wanted to ride a super sport bike on public roads, I would personally fit higher handlebars. The problem with low handlebars is counterweighting. From a geometry point of view, a super sport bike can do it. But the tank shape is relatively wide. It does become narrower where the cutout is, where you can support yourself with your knees or thighs. But when counterweighting, these wide edges become a problem, because with low handlebars, your forearm presses into them. You almost have to move your body over the tank so that your hands are nearly vertical on the handlebars. But then the problem becomes smooth throttle control. Low handlebars in hairpins really require a lot of experience and very clean counterweighting technique. A supersport bike cannot ride a hairpin much faster than another motorcycle anyway. In hairpins, we are not talking about one type of motorcycle being massively faster than another. That is different from fast roads or racetracks. So it does not really matter whether it is a chopper, a road-oriented motorcycle, a touring bike or an adventure bike like a Varadero, GS or Africa Twin. Those adventure bikes are of course much more maneuverable. Try it out once. Take a road bike or a sporty road motorcycle, keep it upright, turn the handlebars all the way to the mechanical stop and ride a half circle at walking speed. Then do the same thing with a GS or an Africa Twin, handlebars to the stop, bike upright, walking speed, half circle. Then you will see that you end up much further inside.
On mountain roads, in tight bends or hairpins, there is one trick that I always use. It gives a huge amount of safety and really helps. When you approach the hairpin, especially when you are riding uphill, you look up before entering the corner and check first, is anything coming towards me or not? If I have that information in advance, it makes choosing the right line through the hairpin much easier. At the beginning, you should practice on a flat area. Do not start immediately on a slope or on a downhill section. Maybe you can find a car park somewhere that is not closed after business hours. Then use a width of 3 parking spaces. You ride in along the outside line, make a turn within the parking area, and ride out at the 3rd parking space. Then the goal should be that at some point, you can already exit at the 2nd parking space. In other words, you only need around 2 parking spaces of width for the turn. If you are just a little bit wider than that, it is still okay. But if I always practice using 3 parking spaces, I will eventually also ride too wide a line on the road and might end up in oncoming traffic.
I do not know how you see it. Was it unnecessary for us to make this video? Or have you also experienced drama happening in hairpin bends? I have to admit, every time I have been riding in the Alps, especially on the Stelvio Pass, which has this magical and almost mystical attraction for me, I have personally seen plenty of memorable scenes where riders did not really have their hairpins under control. Maybe sometimes in a slightly slapstick kind of way. Feel free to post your best moments in the comments below. Of course, I hope nothing bad happened, but that is the good thing about these hairpins. They are relatively slow, so you can usually talk about those little mishaps afterwards as long as they end harmlessly, which I hope they usually do. Thanks for adding to the discussion. Thanks for taking part. A thumbs up from you for us would be fantastic. Goodbye and Baba.